Good afternoon. Okay, this looks like a church. And at this point, I guess I will be the lead pastor. So, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's going to be a very interesting 3 days. And this is Union Bank's contribution to advancing the conversations that we need to have to grow our educational sector. I told you, now the pastor is in. I think this might be a better job for me. The topic of our conversation today is the potential of education to transform Nigeria. You have to ask a few questions and say to yourself, what has education been doing in Nigeria in the past 10, 20, 30 years? And do we have a transformed country? And if we agree that we have some challenges, we then have to say to ourselves, how do we change the course of education so that it can catalyze the kind of changes that we want in Nigeria? If you talk to an average Nigerian today, no matter where you live, from Ikoyi to Umahia to Kafanchan to Sokoto, they will tell you that there are certain fundamental issues they would like to see resolved in the direction of the country. Everybody will talk to you about, one, the power situation. Secondly, the state of our healthcare. Thirdly, the state of education. And, everybody comes up with a long list of challenges that they want policymakers to address. At the bedrock of all of this, the basic challenge we have has been fixing education. People always tell you that however you look at it, no nation develops beyond the level of education in there. No nation develops beyond the level of education. Today, there are so many countries that have exciting, amazing. I remember when we were growing up, if you went to school out of Nigeria, we actually thought you were not very smart. Because we thought, okay, maybe you didn't have your 7 subjects in WAEC, or you have 1 or 2 challenges, that's why you went to school abroad. Because the standards of our education was actually amazing. I think I wrote JAM 4 times before the university agreed to actually give me a chance. So that tells you how competitive it was to actually be able to be accepted into a Nigerian institution. But today, like somebody told us, the Honorable Minister told us you have 36,000 doctors, Nigerian doctors in America. Also, I think about 3 weeks ago, the American Embassy published something saying Nigerian students are the largest contingent of students in America. If you go to other countries, there are countries where you have Nigerian students today, Cyprus, all over the world. Just because in Ghana, you have Nigerian students in Ghana. We have very good universities here, but you still have students just across the border in Ghana. You have students, Nigerian students in practically South Africa, practically every country in the world. Why is this? I believe that until we understand the capacity of education to improve, to urgently transform our country, we would not have fixed the problem. Why do we believe education has the capacity to transform the country? The panelists just talked to us about digital education, digital literacy, and a lot of English that I don't really understand, but thank God I'm in almost 60, so it's something for the next generation to deal with. It says to you, these things are happening today. The course of change in the global markets, in the global industry, in the world is happening at a faster pace. You have companies dealing with intelligent products that their turnover is larger than the budget of Nigeria. That tells you, if you even study, if you look at, there's a magazine that publishes the list of the richest people in the world. And if you look at how that list has changed in terms of what they do, you would understand the value of education. There was a time, the richest man in the world used to be somebody who had supermarkets. There was a time he used to be somebody who was in cement, who had cement, telecoms companies, Mexican. But today, some of the richest people in the world run technology companies. That tells you the impact of education and the way that education is changing. Education has the capacity to boost the productivity of a country. You can imagine, I'll give you a small example. Very shortly, the African Free Trade, Continental Trade Agreement will come into being. That is when Nigeria will start to understand the importance of education. In countries where they're well educated, where they have a very good economic system, they would now be able to send goods to Nigeria without paying taxes, without customs duties and all that. The whole of Africa becomes one open market. When that happens, the advantages that countries bring to the table becomes greater. That means an average African can practically work in any country in Africa. Because once you have open borders, if you have studied what has happened in Europe, once you have open borders, talent goes to the best location. About 3-4 weeks ago, the Prime Minister of United Kingdom said, you know what? If you study in United Kingdom today, we're happy to give you a 2-year visa after you finish to stay back. It's the war for talent. And underlying that war is education. Because, like I said, education has the capacity to boost productivity in all these countries. And what does the Prime Minister of United Kingdom want? He's a politician. If you don't boost productivity, increase the wealth of your people, you will not get re-elected. Today, Nigerians are in Australia, in Canada, and all of these places. And these countries are actually taking our best and brightest. They're not taking me, they're not taking, artisans. They're taking extremely well-educated Nigerians because they value education and its impact on boosting their national productivity. If 10,000 Nigerians get to Canada today, they will need a place to live. They will need work. They will work. They will pay taxes. They will buy cars. They will buy petrol. They will pay for heating. They will buy clothes. So before you know it, they are contributing to the productivity of that country. The GDP in the country will change. Also, as we have heard, and many people have said it, one of the largest contributions that education makes in any country is actually catalyzing innovation. Prior to when the local content laws in Nigeria were made, there were many things in the oil and gas industry that were imported. And I'm trying to tell you how important education is. Once the laws changed, you found that companies started investing in educating people to produce those things that were now mandated to be produced by Nigerians. But until the law changed, they didn't do that. They didn't see the need to invest in those things to move the country forward. But in doing those things, we're creating jobs locally and not creating jobs outside Nigeria. There are areas of Scotland that used to just produce engineering items for oil and gas companies in Nigeria. But as soon as those laws were in place, and as soon as you started to see companies focusing on developing Nigerians to do those things, some of those countries started to feel the pinch. So another thing is catalyzing innovation. There's so many things happening in Nigeria today. It's the positive direction. Some of them are by our children. Kids can code today. They can do so many things, but we have to give them the enabling environment and educate them appropriately to be able to do these things. I think one of the last things I will talk about in terms of the value of education is boosting purchasing power. The DG was here, the minister was here, and everybody says to you, for example, if you lend to women, you always get your money back. The reality is this: for many of us, when we were growing up, we actually got sent to school by our mothers because they had access to small loans here and there, and their trading operation was able to take you all the way through school. Because of that access and because of our own education, we were able to transform families. In those days, for those who are from the southwest part of the country, when you got educated, it was your responsibility to educate the rest. So it's like, educate one, and before you know it, you educate the entire family. In educating the entire family, you're able to increase the buying power of that family. You start to see the transformation of their economic activities, the transformation of their purchasing power, and the things that they can do in those families, compared to if you didn't have education. Somebody said it earlier today. I remember in those days, when you saw your teacher, even your father would almost prostrate to the teacher, because they know that your future is in their hands. One of the most dreaded things that parents used to think about in those days is that when you get home and you say, they said they want to see you in school. It's like, what have you done? Because parents realized the power of education, the power of teachers, the power of those who molded the future of their children. You get sent a letter, your parents wants to be seen in school. Even you, before you take the letter home, you are beating yourself properly. Because whether it is to actually, when you now get there and they wanted to give you a prize, after the beating, they would apologize. But the reality is that, parents, no matter how wealthy or rich they were, respected the educational institutions. So for me, it also had the power of transforming families and transforming economies within a family. When people get educated, they transform the economies of their families. So in Nigeria, one of the things that the World Bank has always advised us to do was to increase the level of budgetary allocation to education. In the environment, there would never be enough. Hence, there is need for collaboration. One of the things that we are doing at Union Bank is, one, Edu 360, which brings the stakeholders together to actually talk about, agree on priorities to move education forward. All of these priorities and action steps, as you have seen, the minister was here, is still around, taking notes, consulting with educational sector key players, trying to understand and get more information about how national programs and national priorities can be established. On our part, we have quite a lot of programs. This year alone, we have trained teachers in Lagos, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, This year, we have had meetings with heads of schools trying to understand their financing priorities for private schools and how we can help. Also this year, we have a program under the Alpha product where for schools that belong to women, we'll be able to fund them at a discounted interest rate. Schools that belong to women will be able to be funded at a discounted interest rate. Or schools where majority of the teachers are women, we will be happy to get them on board and finance them, provide financing for them at a discounted rate. That makes those schools sustainable, improves the quality of education they get. It's not to say we'll bank the men as well, because I see some men there not too happy. But if you're a man in this room today, and if you accept, like I accept today, that if it was not for my mom, I would not be standing in front of you. You know? So, it's not to say that my father wasn't important, but the person who beat me the most, who took me to school, who woke me up when I was snoring, and when I had exams, who made sure that, you know what, you turned up for the exam, was the person who was most responsible for the success. And under those circumstances, as we have said, you know, when you raise a woman, you raise a family. So we will catalyze, we will give these loans, and we would ensure that we work with school owners who are women to ensure we improve the quality of education that they bring and to educate our children better. Thank you very much, and thank you for the day.